I asked our children this morning if they were children of light or children of darkness, and that was maybe above their heads, but I think it'll give them something to think about. So I ask you this morning, are you a child of the light? Or is anyone here a child of darkness? That's good. You answered correctly. It's easy to think of ourselves as being either good or bad. As I've said many times, the old Westerns, we want to wear the white hats, not the black hats. The passage we just heard from Ephesians seemed to encourage this type of either-or thinking. Paul urges us to be children of light, that is, followers of Christ, who seek to live and share with one another and the world the love of God and the love of neighbor. We are to let go of our self-interest and pursue being at least as concerned about others as we are concerned about ourselves. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it, says Jesus. We see our fulfillment not in serving ourselves, but in serving others. Then there are the children of darkness. These are those who put their self-interest above all else. These are those who don't give, insert your expletive deletive here, who don't care about others except as a means to getting what they want. Children of darkness have no concern about making a better society or helping right wrongs. They don't care. They only care about their own desires and whims. If harassing or torturing someone amuses them, they will do so and have no sense of guilt. Like the man who in the papers we read about murdered his wife and 3 of their children, when he was brought before the court to hear the charges, he smirked as if he didn't care, and he didn't. He is a child of darkness. It's easy for us to stand tall and proud, as we just did, as we identify with being children of light. We stand for truth and justice. We affirm in our baptism that we will combat injustice, resist evil, and work towards aligning our world with the kingdom of God. There's a problem. Children of light often become pawns of the children of darkness. A desire to do good can frequently turn into something that is dark. Children of light have a tendency to have tunnel vision, or be like the horse that wears blinders. Do you know why a horse wears blinders? You don't see it as often because not many horses on the road. But some horses got spooked easily. Their eyes are set far apart in their head, and they sort of have a peripheral vision that you and I don't have. And if something moves real quickly over here or something happens here, the horse will become startled and rear. That's not good for the rider. It's especially not good if the horse is pulling a wagon or a carriage. So, to compensate, they would put blinders on the horse that would limit the side view of the horse and get the horse just focused in what was in front of it. Children of light can be like that. We can be like a horse wearing blinders. We only see what we want to see right in front of us, and we miss or ignore everything that's happening around us on each side. We see what we want to see, and very easily, a child of light serves a child of darkness. Now, Jesus understands and understood that despite our willingness to follow him, we will often become our own worst enemy. We do so because we mistakenly believe that our goodness and our pursuit of goodness allows us to escape sin. We forget that despite our desire to sacrifice and to give to others. We, the vaunted children of life, also, like all human beings, harbor a desire for fulfilling our self-centered lives and desires. We foolishly think that because we pursue good, we ourselves will be good. This is the flaw that enables darkness to use the light and to corrupt that light in order to serve darkness. Do you remember Peter? Peter was one who thought of himself as a child of light because he was one of Jesus' disciples. And he followed him wherever he went. But Peter also served darkness on occasion. When Jesus again said to his disciples, "It is important that the Son of Man go to Jerusalem. There he will be rejected, tortured, and die." And Peter stood up and rebuked Jesus and said, "Do not let that happen. Stop talking this way." In that moment, he served darkness. And Jesus rebuked him and said, "Get behind me, Satan." And Peter was taken aback because he thought what he was saying was a child of light. Later on, when Jesus was arrested, Peter denied him 3 times. That's not a child of the light. That's serving darkness. And when Jesus most needed him in his time of trial and rejection, Peter hid with the other disciples. Lastly, Peter was given a vision by God when he became a missionary, and God showed him that there is no one in the world that is unclean, that is not acceptable to God. And the vision showed all the foods that in the kosher laws you weren't supposed to eat. And God says, "Pick up and eat." "Oh, I can't eat that. That's unclean." "Peter, if what I made I say is clean, how can you not eat it?" And Peter understood the vision. And so he began to preach and proclaim that all the people of the earth, the Gentiles, the non-Jews, should be allowed to be part of followers of Jesus. But then he got with some of his friends from Jerusalem up there in Antioch. And when it came time to eat, he sat with them because he didn't want to become unclean sitting with the Gentiles. And it was Paul who confronted him and said, "You can't have it both ways, Peter. How dare you insult these people whom God showed you in your vision that should be included?" And yet Peter was a child of the light, went on to proclaim the message of God in Jesus Christ, and himself suffered death in Rome because he was a follower of Jesus. You see, even as children of light, we will have moments that we lose our way and we will serve darkness. But the difference is, with Jesus Christ in our life, we won't be in the dark so long that the light pulls us back. Jesus' light pulls us back and we get back on track. But a child of darkness, a child who is truly part of darkness, doesn't care. It makes no difference. They could care if there was light or no light because they are totally preoccupied with themselves and don't allow anyone else to count. In psychological terms, we call these people sociopaths. There have been many moments in our history that our desire to do good became a cause to serve darkness. Back in the late 19th century and into the 20th century, a movement grew called prohibition. Is anyone here old enough to remember the days of prohibition? Now you're telling me something if you raise your hand. If you raise your hand, you're really old. But in those days, there was a movement called Prohibition that grew and grew. And if you remember, it was to remove the legal sale of any alcoholic beverage, to make it illegal, and therefore make the whole nation teetotalers. Now, there was a problem, because what was served at communion? Wine. Wine has alcohol in it. It fell under the rubric of what should be prohibited. So there was a problem there. And no one wanted to make an exception. Well, how can we have communion? And in stepped Mr. Welch. Truly. There was no such thing as grape juice. It was fermented wine. It was wine from the grapes. The grapes were used. And in the South, everyone would make homemade wine and reserve a bottle that would be donated to the church to use in communion. Could be Scuppernong, it could be from Concord grapes. I don't know. I don't think apple wine was used, but it was grape wine, and it would be donated to the church. But the Prohibition movement said, no, we can't have that. Mr. Welch says, I can fix that. I've developed a process to get juice from the grape, and I can pasteurize it, and it can be used because there's no alcohol in it. And many of the Prohibition people say, that's wonderful. And so all these churches stopped using the wine and began using grape juice. In fact, the last area of the country that gave up the wine was the South, because it had become important that a family who made homemade wine give something to the church. It was considered sacred. So a lot of people had problems with that. So Prohibition grew, and one of the leaders was a Methodist bishop, or I should say a bishop of the Methodist Episcopal Church South. And he became a leader of the Prohibition movement. He was the head of what was called the Anti-Saloon League. So you had these images of Carrie Nation with her hatchet going out and destroying saloons. If you ever see a picture of Carrie Nation, she will scare you to death. She was a wild-looking woman in her proper bonnet and her black dress. But in her eyes, she's mad. But the movement carried forward. Prohibition became law. And on a certain date, all the casks of wine, all the bottles of liquor, all the tankards of beer and ale were destroyed. Good triumphed. Yes, the children of light. Well, what happened? What happened? The children of light contributed to darkness, because what grew up was an illegal business of moonshine, of speakeasies, of criminal elements that before had been minor became major elements as they made a lot of money making their own liquor or bringing it down from Canada. The whole organized crime movement was a result of Prohibition. So the children of light, with good intentions, actually served the cause of darkness. We have the example here of the children of light engaging in darkness, seeking to dispel the darkness. But in this example, we see how we disregarded the reality of sin. And that's one of the problems with children of light. Children of light forget that all of us are sinners, which is sort of like Murphy's Law. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Sin is, you can't escape sin. If you're a human being, you have within your nature a desire to cut your own path, to go your own way and ignore and disobey God. We forget that we're all like that. And children of light, in forgetting the reality of sin, sometimes are like the horse with blinders, can only see their goal and their agenda, and they don't realize the consequences of what they're doing. Christ saw this in his disciples and in the human beings around him. He knew that at any moment, those who praised him could turn on him. He understood that within all of us, there is a dire desire for self. A self who is wealthy, a self who gets recognition for the good that they do, the self who covets power. Christ gave his life to not only save us from darkness, but to show us how far we, the children of light, need to go if we're going to be faithful followers, faithful witnesses of his light. A child of light will experience a full, rich, abundant life with joy. But this richness also includes moments of sacrifice, confronting our mistakes, and experiencing from the world persecution and slander. Yet in our willingness to be disciples who accept the burden of sins, the sins of ourselves and the sins of others, we have a better chance to be real children of light. We have a better chance of being real disciples and not posers. Jesus said, I require you to be as cunning as serpents, but as innocent as doves. As children of light, we have to take chances and yet find our innocence not in our acts, but in our willingness to confess our mistakes, willingness to have course corrections in life, and most of all, accepting Christ's sacrifice for us and his sacrifice for the entire world. Amen.